After 1945, a comforting narrative took hold, that humanity had finally outgrown its violent past, and that global peace was the new default state of our species. But when we look across the full span of human history, periods of true stability are the exception, not the rule. We usually explain modern outbreaks of violence as a failure of the system, blaming a single diplomatic breakdown or a specific rogue dictator, a sudden surge in religious extremism. This chart shows the reality of the post-war era. While traditional world wars between states have nearly disappeared, we see a massive, sustained surge in civil and proxy fights that have moved in to take their place. To understand why we never stop fighting, we have to look past these historical excuses. We need to examine the specific evolutionary traits, group identities, and economic constraints that make conflict a predictable outcome. Peace becomes much harder to achieve when we treat war as a diplomatic accident. It is more accurately described as a built-in feature of our species, and solving it requires acknowledging that reality. Human biology includes a rare evolutionary trait. We possess very low levels of reactive aggression, the impulsive lashing out seen in other primates, but we have a specialized capacity for high proactive or planned aggression. This creates a lion and goat dichotomy. Within our own groups, we are generally peaceful and highly cooperative, but we possess a clinical ability to coordinate the elimination of outsiders. In evolutionary biology, this is analyzed as an evolutionary stable strategy. This refers to a set of behaviors that persist because they consistently provide a survival advantage in a competitive environment. Organized violence becomes mathematically viable when a group determines that the long-term benefit of controlling a strategic territory outweighs the immediate mortal risks of the battlefield. In biological terms, warfare functions as a calculated mechanism for collective survival. Moving from individual biology to the group, the brain requires an external trigger to activate its capacity for violence. This trigger is explained by social identity theory. Our brains use the fusiform face area to categorize everyone we meet into a tribe with extreme speed and efficiency. We neurologically process the faces of outsiders with less detail and granularity. This failure to encode individuals from other groups provides the biological foundation for dehumanization, making violence psychologically feasible. This tribalism serves a vital function during wartime. Facing an external threat forces extreme internal cohesion, turning loose individuals into a loyal, unified fighting force. When we look at these psychological dynamics, the religious or ideological differences we often cite as the root of war look more like a secondary effect. These ideologies function as a social glue. Leaders weaponize shared beliefs to bind the tribe together and provide a moral framework that justifies the horrors of combat. This tribalism is the mechanism that converts our basic survival instincts into organized mass violence. At the geopolitical level, this interplay is captured in the greed versus grievance debate, a core theory used to explain why wars actually start. On one side, grievance accounts for the public justifications, like honor, identity, or religion. On the other, greed argues that the real driver is the competition for finite material resources. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the city of claimed to wage war against the gods of the cedar forest. That was the mythological pretext. The economic reality was more direct. The growing city-state of needed a massive supply of structural timber for its temples and palaces. We see the modern version of this in resource-rich nations with depressed economies. When the potential profit from looting oil or diamonds exceeds the wages of a legal job, joining a rebellion becomes a rational economic choice. David Keene's analysis highlights how economic agendas consistently outperform grievances in conflict. Greed gains a hold over rebels and governments alike. The evidence shows they interact. Leaders prolong profitable wars by deliberately creating new grievances among the population to legitimize their ongoing looting. The state-level machinery uses the rhetoric of grievance as a smokescreen to secure the underlying economics of greed. When biological fear and psychological identity are channeled to serve economic gain, the result is a self-sustaining cycle of violence. Because the international system lacks a supreme authority to mediate disputes, nations are forced into a state of permanent competition, ensuring this cycle continues to spin. We can see how this will play out in the near future. Global climate change will act as a massive threat multiplier for every one of these drivers. Scarcity of water and arable land will trigger our ancestral survival strategies. When basic resources disappear, the incentives for war become impossible to ignore. We often speak about war as if it were a societal disease that could be cured with enough education or diplomacy. Lasting peace can only be pursued by acknowledging and managing the inherent architecture of human nature, rather than pretending it doesn't exist.